Thank you very much for joining us. We're here for the Arabian Travel Market virtual events. This is the Breaking Travel News Roundtable. I'm the editor of the site, Chris O'Toole, and we're here today to look at the future of business travel, something I understand you guys know a lot about, so we're here to take a look at your expertise. Just to introduce you first, we have Guy Hutchinson, Chief Executive of Rotana Hotels and Resorts, 100 properties focused in the Middle East, but expanding into Africa and Eastern Europe, and with a real focus on business travel. We have Amanda Fraser, Executive Vice President of Standards and Ratings with Forbes Travel Guide. A lot of experience in the hotel sector, particular focus on boutique hotels. And they're rolling out best practice ideas, some practical changes on the ground around the world. So we're looking to have more there. Guy, if we can start with you. I think there's an understanding now that the leisure sector is coming back, but the business travel sector will take a slightly longer time. In your experience there in the Middle East?
To be honest, Chris, I'm not convinced that actually is how it will work. I don't think anybody really has the visibility or the ability to make any kind of structured forecast or prediction of how this will work. I think the only thing that I'm relatively certain of is that once trust and confidence is back or starts to build from a travel perspective, I think business travel and leisure travel will start and will start to grow simultaneously. I think the last segment to come back will certainly be MICE, meetings, events, anything where there are gatherings or groups of people traveling. I think that's going to be a while before we see that. But I don't see a differentiation between individual business travel and individual leisure travel. I think once safety and trust and confidence is starting to be restored in travel, I think you'll see both sectors move.
And in the midterm, do you see a recovery to the levels seen in 2019, or is this long-term damage, do you think? Or is that impossible to say?
No, I don't think anything is going to be fast, to be honest, Chris. And I think it's going to happen over an extended period of time. Still, it's not clear to anybody, including myself, and I'm a frequent business traveler, how exactly travel is going to be managed and how safe it will be for people to travel, be it for business or be it for leisure. And I think until those structures and systems are clearly established, people are going to be reluctant to travel. And then once they start, the trust, the confidence, the feedback and the ability to travel and to feedback experience from travel, that's going to take time. So for us, to be honest, when you look at sort of normalized business levels, we're not expecting to see that fully restored until likely Q4 21.
Okay. And Amanda, this is something you're very focused on with the Travel Guide, with creating those standards and building that trust. Hello, Raki. How are you? Thank you for joining us. We were just talking with Amanda about the new standards they're rolling out in the Travel Guide and how that's going to build confidence in the travel sector. Can you tell us a little bit more about
Amanda? Hi.
Morning, Raki. How are you?
So perhaps tell us a little bit about that.
Thanks, Chris. Sorry, you cut out then. Did you turn it over to me?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Great. So thank you for that. So yeah, you're absolutely right. And, back to what Guy was just saying, I think at the end of the day, what we saw was, certainly what people are looking for, whether you are a traveler or working in the industry, is that look towards the confidence levels that need to come back. And so what we have been discussing with hotels and what we saw was needed was some guidance as to how to still deliver that really great level of service, especially in the luxury sector, which is what our business focuses on. So we decided, rather than completely give our standards a complete overhaul this year, because that would just add more confusion to what's already a very confusing environment, we decided to put out a set of best practices. So we took our standards and we said, you know what, maybe your hotel is now implementing temperature checks at entry points. but that doesn't mean that service has to go out the window and that you can't still be gracious and thoughtful and kind. So we came out with a guide with hints and service tips of really to put assurance in the hands of the staff and give them that confidence that they can still deliver great service and still deliver a great guest experience. Again, because to Guy's point, people will start traveling more when they feel confident, and they'll feel confident if the staff are executing their jobs with confidence as well.
Is this going to be a long-term process? Are we going to see changes in the design of hotels as we look a couple of years ahead, or is this going to be a sort of temporary process till we overcome the sort of short-term difficulties?
You know, a little bit of both. Right now, our standards and best practices are evolving. We change our standards anyway to keep up with what's happening just generally in the hospitality industry. But our best practices document is definitely a living, breathing document that will update at least once a quarter, and we'll be monitoring that. You know, as far as what we see being temporary versus long-term, that remains to be seen. We consult with, you know, many members of the industry, including our own SAC, which is our Standards Advisory Committee. But it's a little too early to predict what changes might be here to stay and what may be more temporary.
Chris, if I can add to that, to be honest, we're being very cautious to consider any permanent design changes. You know, hotels are built for 25 or 30 years, and there are other factors which are actually more influential in changing design, and particularly the dynamics in some of the markets where we're operating. You know, fingers crossed, 12 months from now, we'll be in a position where a lot of temporary measures can be removed and people can go back to a more normal way of existing and get back into hospitality and restaurants and travel. So in terms of investing capital now to make permanent changes to structures, to hotels, you know, or designing a new hotel for how we're operating today, that's definitely something that we're not embarking on, we're not recommending. You know, in the short term, yes, there's some layouts which are revised, furniture layouts are revised, public spaces are reorganized in terms of social distancing requirements. But I think based on what we know today, to make physical, structural, capital-driven changes to buildings, which will be in place for 30, 40 years, that's not something that we're looking at.
Raki, is it fair to say you're taking the first steps in rebuilding that confidence there in Ras Al Khaimah? You've launched an accreditation scheme for hotels, and you're trying to rebuild that market confidence. Where are we with that?
Yeah, so so obviously people have started to come out of quarantine. There's some traveling that's happening. There's a lot of restrictions that have started to be eased in the UAE. And Ras Al Khaimah has always been the number one option for staycations in the UAE. So we definitely knew that as things start to open up, the fact that we're a nature emirate, we've got sprawling resorts. I mean, Guy knows one of their hotels, the Cove Rotana, has just a beautiful beachfront, lots of spaces. So for us, we wanted to make sure that we prepare the hotels and that the customers and the employees are both safe. So in April, we launched the Stay Safe RAC Hotel certification, and it's really working with our public services department, doing a full sterilization program. We put a really comprehensive guideline to focus on physical distancing, because really the space between people is what's important. Maximum capacities in public areas, restaurants, other facilities. We have dedicated exits and entrances to mitigate contact as much as possible. Hotel colleagues have been trained on really strict hygiene procedures, and every single employee is going through a COVID test, which is funded by us in Ras Al Khaimah Tourism. And then we further amplified it by doing our partnership with Bureau Veritas. They're a globally recognized entity for inspection and certification, because none of us are experts in this. We're experts in taking care of customers. We're experts in smiling and greeting and being affectionate and being, friendly. And this is something that's brand new. So it was best to get really the experts behind it. And the hotel experience now in Ras Al Khaimah is very, very different. We used to be welcomed with someone with a big smile who's warm and friendly. Now those smiles are covered with masks. And Everyone's wearing gloves, and there's hand sanitization, and there's a lot of distancing between how you check in, how you check out. We've implemented in many of our hotels contactless check-in. Your hotels that were used to providing you with buffets have eliminated the buffets. You get 2 seatings. Your menu shows up on your phone. You can do everything through a barcode. So we're really, really looking at ways to do it, and we're partnering with our government authorities to really help put a lot of these things into motion.
With specific reference to the business travel and the MICE sector there, Guy mentioned that might be one of the slower sectors to come back. So I know you guys have built that new conference center, you've hosted the WTTC, you've hosted AHIC. Quite recently, this has been a big area of focus for you. Are you going to readjust now, or do you hope that market will still develop in the sort of midterm?
We have to pivot and adjust, otherwise we won't survive. I mean, the fact that we're having something like this proves exactly that, to Guy's point, it will take a while for the MICE business to come back. Our focus has been very much on the domestic market. We genuinely believe that the domestic market, and we're starting to see it right now, our hotels as a market ran just under 60% last week. Occupancy, much higher average rates. And that's really the capacity where we want to be at this time. But we do see international travel coming up as these travel corridor agreements get signed. So there's bilateral talks between the UAE and other countries, and we're reaching out to various tourist boards. And the travel corridor is going to be where countries that have mitigated and have curtailed COVID as much as possible gets a travel agreement with another country that's done the same, and that's where your travel corridors work. That will be the second phase. But MICE is a huge, huge part of our ethos and travel in general, not just in Ras Al Khaimah. So we do feel that that's coming. The one thing I will say is yesterday I spoke to one of our hotel operators who runs a 4-star hotel in the city in Ras Al Khaimah. He was telling me how 90% of his customers are all corporate customers, and he's starting to see them come back, whether they're there for meetings with the government entities or with some of the other. So domestic corporate is coming back, but I say if we're lucky, we'll see some MICE come back in the 4th quarter, but all of our focus is on the recovery whenever time's right.
Okay, thank you very much. Amanda, back to you. How open are business travelers going to be to changing their behaviors in hotels? You know, these people that travel a lot, they go to a lot of hotels, they're used to a sort of certain level of standards. Are they going to be open to taking temperature checks, to only going to one restaurant, to having those options curtailed? How is it going to be received?
You know, I think a lot of that is somewhat hard to predict. However, one of the conversations that we've been having frequently, and we cover it as well in our best practices, it really comes down to the quality of the communication that the hotels are going to put out, not only at the point that the guest is arriving, but pre-arrival. What's on the website? How are they communicating what the guest can expect? Because once the guest knows what's going to happen, the further in advance of their trip or their stay that they know that, the more open they're likely to be with going through some of these new procedures. I think when people are frightened or scared, it's because they don't know what's going to happen next, and they're going to be more resistant to it. So we've done a big focus in our documentation around communication and the clarity of it, and that's certainly going to be a big help. Also knowing what to do, to your point, when someone does refuse. You know, if you've got a family checking in and they do refuse to do one of the new procedures that you're following, or insist on not wearing a mask if that is something you're asking them to do. You know, that really is down to the hotels and how they want to execute that, but we're well aware that might happen.
And Guy, are you seeing these behaviors rolling out now? Are you seeing a change in booking windows, in the flexibility you need to offer to your guests? I mean, a lot of hotels are making it easier to cancel or move bookings. Is that something you're seeing?
Yeah, listen, I look forward to being able to measure booking windows. You know, I think the key to moving forward in this space, and it's not just for hotels, but I think in terms of how we approach this as destinations and how we reactivate destinations, and within that is the ecosystem, right? It's not hotels just on their own. It's about the tourism authorities like Russell Hamer and Raki and his team, and it's about retail, and it's about freestanding F&B, and how destinations come together and how quickly, collectively, we build trust and confidence back in travel, and how we do that quicker than destinations that we might compete against. So, I think having those kind of procedures in place are not an issue. We've not had any real pushback. People understand that it's safety, and people understand that it's necessary, and you're probably more likely to get criticized if it's not there than if it is there. So I think in terms of the current travel environment, people are looking for these touch points of assurance, that people are being disciplined and being concise and being comprehensive about the safety of colleagues and about the safety of guests. I think, in the current space, that's critical. And moving forward, that's going to be absolutely critical to build quickly that confidence back in travel. Those policies, those procedures, those structures must be concrete, they must be substantial, and they must be consistent. That's what's going to give people confidence in the destination, in the hotels, in the leisure experiences, and we must be consistent in delivering that. And then it's about being human and being flexible. We need to be hungry, we need to be flexible, we need to human, we need to talk, and we need to drive our destinations. So, wherever those might be it Ras Al Khaimah or Dubai or Abu Dhabi or other parts in the Middle East. We need to support each other collectively to get these structures, the standards in place. They're going to give business travelers, leisure travelers, eventually MICE travelers, that focus, that confidence to go, look, this is a good place to go, and it's well managed and it's well structured. And, the remit of experience across hotels, airports, retail, leisure destination, attractions, that experience is holistic, and it's something we can trust and be confident about. I think that really is the key for me. The individual procedures of where you wear a mask, or you don't wear a mask, or you disinfect, these are necessities. For as long as we have to deal with them, then they have to be there, and the lack of them is more worrying than the fact of having them. So these are not things that we are particularly concerned about.
Okay. Is there an opportunity there, Raki, as the market does come back, for you to emphasize the qualities your destination has? A lot of space, you're able to. It's not quite as busy as Dubai, perhaps, or some other more established destinations. Could you take market share there if you're able to social distance in the short term? If people are able to have a bit more of a natural experience there?
I think we've already done that. I absolutely believe that a developing destination like Ras Al Khaimah, which is known for its nature, which is known for its open spaces, I think we benefit during times like this right at the beginning. But at the end of the day, the whole tourism industry will come back when we all unanimously can come back, when people can travel to all of the destinations. Ras Al Khaimah is a great complement to a destination like Dubai, and we've worked very, very well. 60% of our customers come from the international markets and 40% are domestic. And if the airports aren't open, that's a big chunk of our clients that are not enjoying our hotels. Of course, we can survive on the domestic business for a very short term, but in the long term, it's the whole stratosphere of what tourism drives, making sure that the restaurants are open, making sure that the attractions, making sure Emirates and Etihad and all the airlines and Fly Dubai, the low-cost carriers and the charter flights, it is such a complex ecosystem that drives it. And that's the beauty of when it's sort of like when you're doing revenue management for a hotel, you have your base business and then you build it with a little bit of MICE and corporate and seasonality and FIT rates. It's the same with building a destination. You've got some drive, you've got some international. So yes, short term we benefit, but long term, unless the international travel markets open up, we all struggle as an emirate and as a country. I mean, to the UAE, being an oil-rich nation, being a country that's well with a very high GDP, tourism makes up almost 12% of the country's GDP. We have over 750,000 employees that work in the sector. if hotels don't have the liquidity to keep those employees, if a lot of people are getting laid off, all of that has such a negative impact on it. So we need everyone to benefit for us to do great.
Okay, very interesting. And just perhaps the final topic, the role of technology. I know everyone's always very excited about the opportunities from a very practical level, robots moving luggage around hotels and things that are always on the horizon, but have not quite come as quickly as possible. Amanda, do you see this as an opportunity to really invent some processes within the hotels over the next year or two?
Yeah, possibly. I think at the end of the day, though, what the guests are looking for, and the staff as well, is that human connection. That's what people are missing right now. That's what's going to bring people back to the hotel. So, a robot is great. It definitely, if you're, requesting something to your room, could meet an efficiency standard, but you are going to miss that human interaction and that intuition and the smile in someone's eyes. You can't get that from a robot. So I think it's a little bit of both. I think choices are important, especially in the luxury space. So why not? We've seen it work before, but as a total complete takeover, probably not.
So you're in agreement with Guy that changes might be short term. Hopefully we'll return to something like normal or something close to what we had before in the sort of midterm.
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Chris, we're all promoting a contactless guest experience, which is sort of, the anti-hospitality concept. So, I'm most excited about the time we get to be able to completely abandon a contactless guest experience and go back to delivering a contact-driven guest experience.
Okay. I couldn't agree more with Guy and with Amanda. I mean, we didn't get into the hospitality business to social distance. It's not in our DNA. It's not in our SOPs. I mean, I enjoy going on vacation to switch off my phone and to connect with people and have great service. And the only thing I'll say from an industry perspective, I always remember the days when airlines pre 9/11, you could meet someone at the gate when they came out of the plane. Things were very, very different. And what happened after 9/11 just changed the travel industry to the worse. From an experience perspective, I don't know about safety. I'm sure there was a lot of great measures, but it was a simple thing to prevent terrorists from taking over a plane, put locks on a pilot's door. And what happened, and that would have been the simple, logical solution. And what came just completely changed the industry where, you have to be there, especially in the US, you have to be at the airport 3 hours before travel for an hour flight. I just hope that doesn't happen, because our industry is all about connecting. It's all about creating memories.
I think a lot of what we were hearing there is the hodgepodge of regulations that came in at different times. I think unity will be a very important topic here to make sure everyone's on the same page moving ahead. Really appreciate your time today, guys.